Welcome back to Cheche, the program where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. In an attempt to restore its image after corruption allegations, the National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee elected a new set of leaders. Nicholas Gumbo, the ODM MP for Rarieda, became the committee's new chairman. And so we're discussing Parliament's capacity to fight corruption today. And so far, Mr. Gumbo, our viewers seem unimpressed. The last Parliament where Gumbo served crafted a recall clause whose threshold can never be met. Can he be honest? That came from Kiwoi in Taita Taveta. PAC Chair, there is a serious perception of conflict of interest in MPs playing the oversight role if the representation role is not checked. These MPs are very corrupt and are averse to being subjected to checks and balances. Something needs to be done, and now, and then roles need to be redefined. That came from Engineer Onesimus and Sotik in Bomet. So even as you speak and try to explain yourself and how you see this fight against corruption going, the viewers, the public watching you, doesn't seem to believe you.
What don't they believe? I mean, I've just said there's the recall clause. I mean, those are the provisions that are in the law. The only way to change those provisions is to make amendments, and that is the law that we have.
Yeah, but there is no initiative in that regard.
And
the initiative has to come from the people.
Made it very difficult to recall.
It's the law, Mutegi. I mean, I wouldn't, if you want me now to say that two people can walk in and sign a petition and recall the MP when there is the law, that is the law. And we have to work with the law.
You know, Honorable Gumbo, the law was passed with selfish interest. Yeah. I mean, we went into that election with watered down legislation.
Which you
on the ethics chapter 6 completely was watered down. We are heading into another election with that watered down law. Is there anybody self-conscious thinking that we need to reinforce Parliament and institutions we need to make amendments?
Like the recall, I mean, obviously you know that if the people feel that the law does not adequately address the constitutional provisions, they have a recourse to the court. I haven't heard, by the way, for instance, the gentleman who has just complained, going to court and saying that this law infringes on my constitutional rights. This, you see, we also as a nation, we must stop being complaining that we every time, even things that we can do. I have not heard anybody complain that this law as it is now is not workable. That is what the courts are there for, to interpret the laws. We make the laws. And you know, remember what I told you, sometimes it's not the laws that you need. It is just people to be nice to one another, so that we move the country forward. But the laws are there, and so long as the laws are there, we cannot presuppose that they are not there. That is what the law says. And I only said that there's the recall clause, and we are within the period when a member of Parliament can be recalled. What else am I supposed to say? Okay. That we start stoning members of Parliament in public?
Right. This from Juma in Pokot.
Yes.
I'm surprised listening to Mheshimiwa's narrow and shallow understanding of corruption, limiting it only to mismanagement of public resources. Corruption is found in all spheres of life, even in relating with other people, fulfilling one's duties, etc. Let him see corruption in a wider scope.
No, I have to comment. I think it's confusing. There's a difference between ethics and corruption. Some of what he has talked about there is on the spheres of ethics. I spoke about corruption. And really, if it's about ethical issues, ethical behavior, ethical conduct, that is a wider issue.
I think if I'll take the liberty of speaking for Juma here and say that corruption falls, you have the mismanagement of public resources, nepotism, abuse of office, which we were discussing earlier. There's a broader scope, and the impression that I get from Juma here is that you seem to be confining yourself to abuse of public resources when there's so many other things that are corrupt in this country.
You know, the corruption is got, if you like, the twin sisters of ethics and integrity. Those go together. And honestly, you had just asked me my understanding of corruption, which I provided. But what he has talked about, a lot of it borders within the spheres of integrity, within the spheres of ethics. And that is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
So if we go back to values, and this is anchored by this message from a viewer, I'm quite impressed by the discussion today. Primarily, the problem with Kenyans is lack of understanding of what happens at the grassroots, which is what spills out later as results. My question to Gumbo is, how does he intend to build confidence and faith in the public as well as the National Assembly? All we see is change, change, change. How are you going to be different?
I'm going to be different because I'm a unique individual. That's number one. And number two, we have identified some of the problems that were there in the committee. They were not very major. A lot of it had to do with the way it conducts its business. Number one, the committee can't deliver unless we have faith in one another, right? Which is what we are working on. It's not about, it's a team effort. It's not about Gumbo. It's about the committee delivering as a committee. And as one sports person once said, there is no letter I in the word team. So really, we are working as a team to try to build the team confidence, because at the end of the day, whatever we give out to the public, the credit cannot just go to me as a chair. If I have
Are you saying that the previous one didn't work as a team? That's the point you're making?
There were issues with teamwork.
Right.
I can't say to what extent, but clearly, even when you looked at the report of the Powers and Privileges Committee, there were issues to do with teamwork, and we have worked on that so that we work together as a team, valuing every view from each and every one of those members of the committee. But most importantly, you must remember that the work of the Public Accounts Committee has changed over the years. Before, we were mainly concerned with what you can call financial accounting. But now it's a lot more. In fact, financial accounting only forms a small part of what we do. We have to look at value for money. We have had cases, for example, where somebody would walk into a committee and say, okay, I bought this big pen for 400 shillings because we invited open tenders and this was the lowest. Is that value for money? Of course, it's not value for money. We are talking about performance auditing. How does every shilling of public taxpayers' money perform? So this is now what we are looking at. It's not a question of looking at the entry and the exit. We are also looking at the processes between the entry and the exit.
Yeah. And what is the ultimate outcome of Public Accounts Committee work? We have had in the past reports of the PAC that make recommendations that go nowhere, including blacklisting people from holding public office, and they're even in the National Assembly sitting pretty. They could even be part of your committee. What is it that can be done and from the past?
At the end of the day, and remember I started by saying that this fight cannot be the sole responsibility of Parliament. In fact, I have been looking at some of the public accounts records in the past. They have got solid recommendations. But remember, execution is not the work of Parliament. That is the work of the executive. So unless all the three arms of government are willing to get into a tangle and agree that this is something that concerns all of us, we'll make excellent reports. And I can guarantee you that we are going to do that. We are working, for example, right now we are working on the procurement issues in the judiciary. We are going to release a report which, to the best of our ability, conforms with what we believe is the public expectation. Right. But then we'll make recommendations. If we make recommendations that this officer, for instance, should step aside, I have no way of going to that office and locking the door and saying you can't come to the office. So it is like a conveyor belt. It's like a relay race. Yeah. And sometimes the weaknesses don't necessarily have to be within Parliament. It has to be within the conveyor belt. Yeah.
Okay, one of our viewers, Waweru, picks up on David's earlier question and would like a direct response. The previous pack, not all members, as you said, were found to have been engaged in corruption. Is the only punishment they get to get them out of the committee? While a junior police officer found, corrupt, ends up in jail, okay, it's not fairly, composed, but you get the point. That people lose jobs and end up in jail if they're found to be corrupt. What happens with parliamentarians?
I read the Powers and Privileges report. Of course, there were allegations of corruption. But I guess to reach a point where you reprimand, you must move allegations to have tangible proof. Because when you act on mere allegations, really, we don't want to be a society that today, what would stop me from just shouting, you are this? Yes. So that for me, you know, we must accept Woodwork that even as we confront this monster, it has to be done within order. If you just make it like question that somebody shouts thief and that is it, your fate is sealed, then where will we go really as a nation? The report was very clear that these were allegations. No one came forward, for example, because corruption, you know, it takes two, the giver and the taker. No one came forward and said, I gave you this and this is the evidence that I gave you the money. I didn't see that in the report. So if you are going to say that, okay, someone has said you did this.
Is that the case, Mr. Gumbo? Because I recall there was a clear, even on the record, testimony of money having been paid to a certain member of parliament who said, I got this amount.
Not in the PSC. That was, you are confusing, there are two committees.
Yes.
There was a committee, this was not PSC, there was a committee where members said, explain to us.
I think it was agriculture.
Yeah, it was not about PSC.
Yeah.
Yes.
The allegations of I got 200,000 shillings and so gave out the money was not made in the PSC.
Hang on.
It was in the PSC, and including the recordings,
David.
which in fact, why there is a lot of mud and lack of clarity around that issue.
David, the recordings were dismissed by the committee.
Exactly. Now that's the problem, because the committee was not willing to go the deepest to get the matter out. You know, using their standing orders and privileges, and you know, the matter is laid to rest. How is it defensible?
Somebody said I received, received some money.
Yes.
The committee, the Powers and Privileges Committee felt that was not good enough.
How can that be? Now that's what we are saying.
Well, I can only speak on the report that was put before Parliament.
I remember the Speaker invited.
How are we supposed to have faith in you?
I mean, how?
If you can't even, you know, within Parliament, your colleagues can't even investigate allegations that are brought to them, you know, recorded. Why should we believe
an admission that I received?
Come again?
Why should we believe you? Why should we have faith in you? Because essentially what you're doing here is defending yourselves.
No. I Woodwork, don't.
Not you as a person,
no.
But as MPs in the PSC.
I said I do not speak for anybody. I can only speak for the committee that I've led for the last 2 months. And please
But would you then accept that some of your colleagues are not as committed to the fight against corruption as others? Because you've talked about the fact, you know, producing excellent recommendations, but then having your hands tied behind your back because there's no will to implement the recommendations. But if, when it comes to you, there is no will to investigate yourself,
no, there is.
Why should we
are 349 odd individuals. Honestly, it would be I would be lying even to myself to say that all of them would have equal commitment with regard to you'll have sour grapes without a doubt. And what I have said is that in my view,
does Parliament have the will and the capacity to fight corruption in Kenya?
I think it does.
What would you do if you had one of your members? You said you are 22.
The committee?
The Public Accounts Committee.
Yes.
You are how many?
27.
If you are 27 and you hear one of them went to the judiciary,
yes,
one of the officers you are investigating,
yes,
compromises that member, what would you do?
We'll recommend for him to be discharged and reprimanded. There's no question about that.
Okay.
Yes.
Discharged and reprimanded?
Yes.
Not taken to court?
But being taken to court is part of the reprimand.
Would you know what happened?
Why should I believe you'll do it? Why don't I believe you'll cover the map?
You asked me what I would do, and now you are answering yourself, and I've given you the answer. I would recommend that he should be discharged and punished
even
accordingly.
In the previous case,
yes,
the Speaker wrote to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, asking them to come and investigate.
Yes.
You know that nothing has been forthcoming from that initiative.
Well, the Speaker wrote, is that not a good initiative? If he wrote, if once he writes to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, honestly, doesn't the honors then go to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to do their work? The fact that the Speaker wrote Doesn't that show that he's concerned about what is happening? I know as we debate this, really, let us give credit where it is due. He has gone ahead and seen we have a problem. Please come and look at us. Tell us where the problem is. If the institution, the constitutional institution that is mandated to do this fails in there, how does it become a problem of Parliament?
I guess the point, and which is my opinion, is that Parliament has become such a monster, it cannot be tamed or controlled, because even when you invite the Ethics and Corruption Commission to investigate you, they're coming, shaking, because the next they'll see is an amendment to dissolve them.
That is your view, which I respect, but I don't agree with.
This is a personal one from Mary, to do with your own record as an MP. MPs are known to demand for transfers of accountants to a firm and resist making irregular payments. They refuse to be guided on financial processes. Gumbo was one of the MPs who was adamant that qualified accountants be thrown out of CDF and be replaced with managers without financial qualifications. I hope that in his new position, he will appreciate that good governance begins with professionals being left to do their work.
That is a lie. I've never even been concerned with the works of firms. So if people are going to call in with lies, I have had fund account managers are posted to my place. I've never had problems with that. In fact, even if I wanted that to happen, it wouldn't happen, because I don't even appoint them. I find them in the office and I work with them. So when people call in again, they should also call in without peddling lies that cannot be proven. Where did I even talk about fund account? I've been sitting in the committee of CDF. I get fund account managers. I very rarely relate with them. So how does it even happen then?
Okay. So if we then go ahead, Musegi.
Do you have faith in the Ethics and Corruption Commission as it is now?
Absolutely not. It can't. There's so many structural weaknesses that it can't even deliver. Number one, you see, if you look at, it's not just the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, it is our constitutional commissions in general. We have serious institutional problems that needs to be sorted out. We have serious legislative problems that need to be sorted out. We have serious policy issues that need to be sorted out. I'll give you the example of ethics and corruption. You saw the standoff between the Secretariat and the commissioners. Is that good for the fight against corruption? No. Why? Because the borderline is not, it's where in essence, in my view, the commission should be concerned more to do with the policy, providing the policy environment for running the policy environment and the oversighting of the commission. We have had commissioners who are also involved in execution. And you ask yourself, for example, why do we, for instance, we need to have commissioners sitting in full-time basis? In my view, I think the commissioners can do their work as part-time commissioners. So these are
reinforcing what the Speaker said yesterday.
Yeah. They should sit as part-time commissioners, and so that you avoid this problem. It's not just at the Ethics and Corruption. We have had this standoff even at the IEBC, where you have a very powerful secretariat, very powerful commissioners who are full-time commissioners. In fact, do you know that today, if you ask most people, for example, you went to the IEBC and asked most people to name the 9 commissioners, other than Hisaka San and maybe Letangule, I don't even know who the rest are, because no one knows even what they do. So this is the problem. It is a structural problem that we have to address. I cannot. As it is now, Mutegi, there is no way the ethics, because number one, they are understaffed. The ability to investigate cases properly is not even there. I've had engagements with some of them. You cannot be giving them such a role. A lot of them, by the way, if you look at the staff turnovers within the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, it has been very high, because you expect them to go after the looters of public resources, but they're not well remunerated.
And what would you say about the Director of Public Prosecutions as the office is now?
As it is now, you see, the thing that I want to make it a larger argument. You see, we have created independent offices and independent commissions. But there is a lacuna, because what does independence entail? In my view, the fact that you are independent does not mean that you have an infinite latitude. That is my view. And that is sometimes the presupposition that you get from time to time. I think independence of necessity must encompass fairness, it must encompass neutrality, so that, and it must also encompass objectivity.
Performance.
And performance, of course. So all these things, if you cannot have that cocktail, that independence will be exercised.
Does the DPP have the same?
I know he's independent. I do not know whether he's neutral, because many times I've heard him say that I will do it the best way I know how. I have also had engagements with some commissioners who say I am answerable to nobody. That is a fault line. When a commissioner tells you I'm answerable to nobody, they are answerable to nobody on operational issues. But with regard, all of us, including the president of this country, is answerable to somebody. So when a commissioner steps forward and says that I'm answerable to nobody and wants to make it a global argument, then there's a fault line there.
Okay, so do you agree then with the move or motion going round to ask to get the DPP out of office?
I'm not aware there's a motion. You know, again...
No, there's a move.
No.
I said move or motion.
Okay. You know, a lot of, we politicians make pronouncements. Sometimes you make it in the spur of the moment. You remember the other day, I think you were here on Citizen, you were interviewing one of the MPs who supposedly was at this prayer service where this move to remove the DPP was or some staffers within the DPP was moved, and he said he's not aware. So a lot of these things really are spur of the moment issues. For me, before it is pronounced on the floor of the House, I think it's a rumor that really I wouldn't want to engage.
Do you think we need somebody else in the DPP's office?
Well, you know, the Keriako Tobiko finds himself in a catch-22 situation. Is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. And let's us also not forget, you know, the argument, when you argue about our country, you have to look at the larger problems that we have. Look at yesterday, the people who turned out to defend Keriako Tobiko. Who were they? They were, You see, why you cannot insulate them? When you're talking, it's no longer. And I was there, by the way, when Keriako Tobiko was appointed, because I sat in the last parliament, and I can tell you, I know those who are at the forefront in ensuring. In fact, there were even threats issued that if you don't appoint him, we walk out. So, really, as a country, I think our problems are bigger than these things, unless we sort out the issue of societal conviviality, where if Gumbo makes a mistake, he has made it as Gumbo, not as somebody who comes from the Lake region. We are going nowhere.
And so going back, let's just dispense with this. Going back to the diminished capacity of the EACC there, do you believe that people on the so-called list of shame can be sure of justice given the compromised capacity?
If you look at Article 2501, I doubt, I'm not a lawyer, I'm only an engineer, but I doubt if you can have a commission without commissioners. Because you look at Article 2501, it says all commissions are comprised commissioners, and then the commissioners appoint the secretariat. So we are having a situation where we are supposedly having a commission. I think this for me is a ploy. I must confess that I am one of the people who gave Uhuru Kenyatta standing ovation when he said we have now turned the corner, we have crossed the red line. But looking back, honestly, I think his statement was pregnant in grandiloquence, but very, very empty on action and substance. Because we are having a situation, I expect a barrage of lawyers walking to court today and saying there is no commission because we don't have a commissioners. So why then do you move a process for, and then even the other questions have been asked. This is supposed to be an independent commission. His action, in my view, it may have been good, it may have been politically expedient, but didn't it also amount to giving instructions to an independent commission? What probably would have happened is change, for example, giving them an impossible timeline. If you are investigating 175 cases in 60 days, what are you talking about? You must then conclude at least 3 cases per day. Is that possible?
And again, what do you say of the fact that the commissioners themselves, when they go out, they're pressurized by people?
They are pressurized. You see, the people, we in COD, said that, okay, we know there are faults within the commission, but why are you exposing this entity to legal challenges by dismissing? We opposed the dismissal of the commissioners. We know they had a problem. There's no question about it. Some of the commissioners had been accused even of engaging in corruption. But we said, if this thing is to go on to conclusion, let us leave them. But why expose it to these unnecessary legal challenges, and yet you're claiming? So we could have been treated to unnecessary window dressing in this fight, honestly, and I think this is not going to help us.
What do you think should be done?
What I think should be done is, of course, it's a much bigger issue, by the way. Corruption in Kenya, and I started by saying it, is much bigger than the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission alone. If you had the best commission, the most, because don't forget, look at the fight against corruption and economic crimes. A lot of people do not know that it is over 60 years old. The first attempt to address this problem came in 1956, long before we became independent. Where have we been? It has been a game of musical chairs. Moi appointed Mwau. Mwau started to go after the big fish. He was dismissed. Ngera came in. He started to go after the big fish. He was dismissed. Then he came in again. You know, this, we are not going to go. So I had said that at the end of the day, without collective determination of we, the people of Kenya, and addressing not just corruption, but interrelated problems, where if Gumbo makes a mistake, you know, criminal liability is not communal. Yeah. Criminal liability is individual. If I'm criminally liable, why should my community come behind me and say our man is being victimized? This is what we are seeing. So we cannot go far. And at the end of the day, don't forget that our CEO is a politician. He cannot listen, cannot choose to ignore these disparate political voices. If Tobacco's people speak as they did yesterday, I would be surprised that Uhuru Kenyatta would just dismiss them and say, those are noisemakers. He wouldn't, because he needs that constituency for his future present and future political programs. So we have to address this, the whole big issue of the Kenyan nation. What is it as a nation? Where did the rain start beating us?
This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. We'll be back after this break.